If we had to name one star who left this world too soon and left behind the deepest sense of loss in modern music, it would undoubtedly be Aaliyah. She was called the Princess of R&B, a fashion icon, the soul of a new wave of black music at the turn of the 21st century. At 22, Aaliyah had everything: fame, a career, love. But who could have imagined that in a single moment she would vanish forever in a plane crash that, even to this day, remains shrouded in unanswered questions? At just 15, she had secretly married a man now accused by dozens of women of abuse. And before boarding that fatal flight, Aaliyah begged, but no one listened. So what secret did this princess carry with her to the grave? Today, you'll hear about the things the entertainment industry has tried to bury forever. Don't let Aaliyah's soft voice and clear eyes fool you. That R&B princess didn't grow up in sweet ballads like people assumed. She grew up in discipline, pressure, expectations, and promises never meant for a child. Aaliyah Donna Houghton was born on January 16, 1979 in Brooklyn, New York. She was the youngest of 2 children in a working-class family, where music wasn't a luxury, it was the lifeblood echoing from the radio each evening. Her father worked in a warehouse, while her mother, an elementary school teacher, once dreamed of becoming a singer but never crossed the threshold of a small stage. Perhaps that's why, when she heard her daughter humming at age 4, she didn't see it as just a child's play. She froze in the kitchen, a spoon in hand stirring a half-boiling pot, tears falling without warning. Because Aaliyah didn't sing like a child, she told stories through music. And then, in 1984, the family moved to Detroit, Michigan. Aaliyah was 5 years old when she began her days of learning music and performing in the local church. From an early age, she was reminded that not everyone gets this chance, that every time she steps on stage, she must give her best because otherwise, someone else could take her place. While other children rushed home after school to play with dolls, Aaliyah would change into performance dresses, tie her hair neatly, and prepare for some event where her name appeared on the lineup. When she had just turned 10, a big opportunity came. Aaliyah joined Star Search, one of America's biggest music competitions at the time. She didn't win, but just a few weeks later, an unexpected turning point arrived. Her aunt, legendary singer Gladys Knight, brought Aaliyah along on her Las Vegas tour. At first, the little girl just tagged along, sitting behind the curtains, watching the grown-ups shine. But one day, during a break, Gladys overheard her niece quietly singing along with the orchestra. She stopped, turned around, and said, "Tomorrow, let her go on stage. People need to hear this voice." That night, for the first time, the spotlight shone down on Aaliyah. She wore a simple black dress, her hair tied high, her eyes looking up without fear. And when she began to sing "My Funny Valentine," the room fell completely silent. After the performance, an elderly musician approached Gladys and said, "That girl isn't a child singer. She has the soul of someone who's lived through deep pain." And after that fateful night, starting at age 11, Aaliyah was invited to perform on many local stages, quickly becoming Detroit's child star. She enrolled in the Detroit School for the Fine and Performing Arts and maintained near-perfect grades. In fact, she graduated in 1997 with a 4.0 GPA. Her friends recalled that she was always calm and polite, but sometimes she would sit for hours by the window, writing long lines in her notebook that no one was allowed to see. One time, a teacher asked her, "What are you thinking about?" And Aaliyah simply smiled and replied, "I'm thinking about how to make people love me and still leave me alone." When Aaliyah's voice began to receive praise at family gatherings, everything seemed like the beginning of a fairy tale. But in most fairy tales, the main character is protected. For her, the lead role came with a contract, one that no one ever asked if she was truly ready to sign. On a spring day in 1991 at the Jive Records office in New York, a 12-year-old girl walked in with neatly tied hair and eyes that couldn't hide their nervous excitement. Beside her was her uncle, Barry Hankerson, who believed his niece's voice could change the entire music market for young black audiences. In that golden-lit room, it took the label executives only 5 minutes to say yes. Aaliyah signed her first recording contract without fully understanding its terms, unaware that from that moment on, Her life would follow a track she no longer controlled. Right after signing with Jive, she was transferred to work with Blackground Records, a label founded by her uncle, and only a few months later, she was brought to a studio in Chicago to meet someone who would soon become the biggest question mark of her life, R. Kelly. In 1992, he had fame, power, and the ability to shape stars like he had done with artists far older than her. But no one warned her in that cold studio room. It wasn't just music being created. There was also a long silence and unspeakable secrets. A year later, they began recording Aaliyah's debut album. The sessions lasted several months at a studio in Chicago's South Side. Each morning, a car would bring the 14-year-old from her hotel. She would record until late at night, then return under the supervision of R. Kelly's team. A studio staff member later recalled how, after singing a chorus, Aaliyah suddenly fell silent. She took off her headphones, stood up, and went into the break room. When someone went in to check, she was curled up on the couch, hugging a pillow, her eyes blank as if she'd just endured something terrible. In May 1994, the album Age Ain't Nothing But a Number was officially released. Every radio station in America played back and forth, and within weeks, the name Aaliyah was everywhere from MTV to BET. Audiences called her the new breeze, timeless voice, teens goddess. But no one paused to ask why was a 15-year-old girl singing lyrics as if she had loved, been betrayed, and longed to die for love. That answer came on August 31, 1994, at a Sheraton Hotel in Rosemont, Illinois, when a marriage certificate was quietly signed. It claimed that Aaliyah Houghton was 18, legally eligible to marry R. Kelly, who was 12 years older. In reality, she had just turned 15 8 months prior. There were no flowers, no rings, no family blessings. It all happened behind the door of a small conference room, with Kelly's personal manager as the witness and a local official who chose to stay silent. The incident was exposed later that year when Vibe magazine published a copy of the marriage certificate. The entire music industry was shaken. Aaliyah's family intervened immediately and annulled the marriage. Her mother told the press she didn't understand what she was being pulled into, but when people tried to reach Aaliyah, she neither denied nor confirmed anything. She only said, "I don't talk about the past, I want to focus on music." That attitude split public opinion. Some believed she was manipulated. Others believed she knew what she was doing. But those who had been in the studio knew better. They saw a girl who spoke little, smiled faintly, and always avoided Kelly's gaze when a third person was present. A lighting technician once saw Aaliyah standing silently in the hallway, hands trembling as she held a glass of water, before returning to the studio as if nothing had happened. From 1995 onward, after the marriage was annulled, Aaliyah completely distanced herself from R. Kelly. She changed producers, redefined her musical direction, and never mentioned his name again. But she also stopped smiling so brightly in later interviews. She spoke less. Instead of answering questions, she would often ask, "How do you want me to answer that?" A close friend recalled that during a visit home to Detroit in April 1995, Aaliyah carried a small black notebook. She would write in it all night, and when asked what she was writing, she said, "To remember because later, I won't be allowed to tell." She never publicly spoke about that marriage, but she never denied it either. Once, during a backstage photo shoot for 17 magazine, when the photographer joked that she was a small woman with a grown mind, Aaliyah simply smiled and said, "I don't know what it means to be just a normal girl." That answer was true, because since age 12, she had entered a world where everything came with conditions. Every step, every note sung, every appearance followed a plan. And when pushed into unclear relationships, no one gave her the right to say no. She only had the right to remain silent. She learned when you can't speak, sing well, sing softly, sing sadly, so that at least, through music, she could express what she was never allowed to say. And from then on, every song by Aaliyah wasn't just music, it was a hidden record, a silent cry for help. A silence so long, only those who have lived in silence can understand. The marriage certificate was annulled a few months later, but no one knows what truly happened between them during that time. And no one can deny one thing from the moment she walked out of that marriage. Aaliyah was no longer a child. In many interviews, when asked about the marriage rumors, She would softly smile and say she didn't want to revisit the past. That wasn't denial. It was a plea not to make her relive something already too painful. A production assistant once recalled that during a studio session. She cried so hard she had to leave her chair, wrap a towel over her head, and sit in silence for hours. When someone came to check, she whispered, "I'm fine. I just need a few minutes not to be anybody." But the career went on. Contracts were signed, tours were booked. She had no time to be fragile. And so she learned to hold everything inside. She learned to walk on stage as if nothing had happened behind the curtains. She learned to smile when the camera rolled, even if her heart had just broken. Somehow, her silence became part of her brand, a mystery that made people love her more, want to know her more. But she no longer spoke. Close friends shared that on a flight back to Detroit after a recording session in Chicago. Aaliyah sat in silence the entire trip. She didn't listen to music. She didn't eat. She just held a small notebook, writing rapidly. When the plane landed, her friend asked what she was writing, and Aaliyah said, "Writing down things I'm not allowed to tell." Once, after a performance in Atlanta, a stagehand saw her sitting alone in the dressing room. The lights were off. Most people had already left, but she didn't move. She just sat there, staring at the ceiling, and said, almost to herself, "If I told, who would believe me?" After the annulment, her family refused all media questions. They stayed silent, just like she always had. One newspaper reported that Aaliyah was asked by her family never to mention R. Kelly publicly again, but the truth was, no one forced her. She chose it herself, because if she spoke up, she would have to relive it from the beginning. And sometimes, surviving means letting it all sink beneath the surface. Aaliyah's career continued to flourish, but to those who truly knew her, something had changed. Her voice grew softer, as if whispering from a faraway place. Not everyone knew that the further she moved from R. Kelly, the closer Aaliyah came to an unnamed fear, a sense that there was an ending waiting at the end of the road that she couldn't escape. In early 2000, after completing filming for Romeo Must Die and signing 2 more film projects, Aaliyah decided to pause all tour schedules and rest for a few months at a small beachfront apartment in Miami. The apartment was on the 14th floor of a quiet complex, with a balcony overlooking the ocean, decorated simply with white curtains, pale wooden floors, and an old piano by the window. It was one of the rare places where Aaliyah could slow down, step away from the stage and the applause. But it was in that seemingly peaceful place that the dreams began. She often woke up in the middle of the night, breathing heavily, cold sweat on her forehead, and sat in silence until morning. A close friend who stayed with her for a few weeks recalled how some nights Aaliyah would bolt upright, her eyes terrified, as if she had just fallen from a great height. When asked, she would only say, "I dreamt I was falling. I don't know from where." And there was no end, just the wind rushing past and the feeling that I don't belong here anymore. Those dreams didn't just repeat. They became more vivid during a dinner in April that year. She turned to her friend and said, "If something happens to me, don't be sad. I have no regrets." The table fell silent, because no one could understand why a 21-year-old at the height of her fame would say such a thing so calmly. Around this time, she began recording short personal messages on a pocket cassette recorder. No one knows the exact content, but some close relatives revealed that in them. Aaliyah often spoke of a desire to disappear peacefully, as if she were preparing for something others couldn't grasp. Once, while getting makeup done for a photo shoot in New York, she sighed and asked her makeup artist a question that haunted her for years. "Do you believe some people are born to leave sooner than others?" But everything kept moving with the pace of a rising star. In August 2001, Aaliyah and her crew traveled to the Bahamas to film the music video for Rock the Boat. It was a project she was excited about, carefully planned, shot in natural settings to create a calm, intimate atmosphere. She kept smiling, worked hard, and thanked every crew member after each shoot. Yet something in her eyes unsettled many on set. Director Hype Williams later recalled, every time the camera stopped, she would stare off into the distance, unblinking, like she was waiting for a signal we couldn't see. On August 25, 2001, the shoot wrapped earlier than expected. The crew suggested that Aaliyah and a few key members fly back early to prepare for the video launch and press tour in the US. The private plane had only 9 seats, and despite warnings of it being overloaded, the airline agreed to take off to please their VIP clients. What mattered was Aaliyah didn't want to board that flight. That morning, she felt unwell and said she wanted to stay another night and fly back the next day, but her manager reminded her of a press conference, a meeting with a fashion brand, and a contract waiting to be signed. Aaliyah hesitated, then nodded. Not because she agreed, but because she was used to not having the right to decide. And then, around 5 in the afternoon, Aaliyah headed to the airport in an utterly exhausted state. A witness at the scene recalled that she didn't walk onto the plane herself, but was helped aboard by a crew member because she had just taken a sleeping pill. That was the last thing anyone saw her do before the plane took off. Just minutes later, the plane plunged into the jungle near the runway, caught fire, and shattered into pieces. 8 people died on the spot, including Aaliyah. Investigators later discovered the plane had been overloaded by nearly 320 kilograms above its permitted limit. The Rock. The boat video was completed using footage already shot. When it was released, millions cried, but not because of the song. It was Aaliyah's gaze in the final scene. She looked straight into the camera, her lips moving as if to say something, then closed her eyes and turned toward the sea. That image, after all, was no longer a crafted scene. It felt like a premonition, a farewell, and a door closing on a soul that had not known peace in a long time. Aaliyah's death wasn't just a tragic accident. It was the result of a series of choices she never had the power to make. And only long after did the smallest details start to surface like fragments buried in ashes. On August 25, 2001, during the last afternoon in the Bahamas, the sky was bright and nearly cloudless. The crew had wrapped the final scenes for Rock the Boat, and everyone began packing to catch the early flight back to the US at that moment. A technician overheard Aaliyah whispering to her assistant that her body felt heavy like lead and she just wanted to sleep. She didn't say it with exhaustion. She said it with intuition. She didn't want to fly that day. According to the crew's report, the small Cessna 402B was overloaded. The combined weight of luggage, filming equipment, and passengers exceeded the allowed limit by almost 300 kilograms. The pilot radioed that some weight had to be removed. But minutes later, a strange man appeared and signed the clearance to proceed on Aaliyah's behalf. The signature wasn't hers, and to this day, no one has revealed who made that decision. Before leaving the hotel, she made a phone call home. It lasted less than 3 minutes, but the words she said still haunt the person on the other end. Her final sentence on that call was, "I don't feel okay, but they say it's fine." The plane took off at 6:50 p.m. just 60 seconds later. It crashed into the edge of a palm grove, less than a mile from the runway, when rescuers arrived. They found Aaliyah's body near the emergency exit, her hair singed, eyes closed as if asleep. In her suitcase were a denim jacket, a brown leather journal, and a half-written handwritten letter. The letter was slightly scorched at the corner, but clear enough to read the first line, "I'm tired of smiling too much. I'm tired of living by someone else's plan." No one ever spoke about that letter. There was no mention of it in any official report. It wasn't until years later that someone from the forensics team quietly revealed there had indeed been such a letter, and that it was the only item in the suitcase that didn't burn completely. During the investigation, several insiders confirmed that Aaliyah had taken a light sleeping pill before boarding. She wanted to rest for a few hours before deciding anything. But the flight didn't give her the time. The question remains if she was asleep. Why was she brought onto the plane, and who made that call for her? One thing is clear, no one becomes a global icon at 22 without an entire system behind them. Aaliyah was no exception. What made her death haunting wasn't just the suddenness, but also what she left behind, or rather, what she was never allowed to leave behind. Throughout 2000 and 2001, Aaliyah appeared consistently on major magazine covers. Her face was radiant, her style more independent than ever, but few knew that nearly all interviews were pre-screened. Her manager would review questions ahead of time, eliminating anything personal, especially about her then-boyfriend Damon Dash. Even in live interviews, If a journalist veered off script, the taping would be cut. Damon Dash once said Aaliyah desperately wanted to break free from her label. She wanted to start her own company, produce films, self-release music, and choose her own team and image. But that wasn't easy. She was bound by at least 2 major contracts, one with the record label and one with her management. Every move she made, from outfits to answers, existed within a framework she had to pretend was hers. Once, backstage at a fashion shoot in Los Angeles, she accidentally dropped a printed schedule packed through December 2002. When the stylist picked it up and asked, "You're working non-stop like this," Aaliyah replied. "This schedule isn't mine, it just has my name on it." Even at her peak, Aaliyah remained a product in motion. The people around her weren't friends. They were representatives, assistants, image consultants, media managers. She lived among crowds, but always carried a solitary gaze. One detail that sent chills through many after the crash. In the suitcase found near her body, along with the journal, was a half-written letter. In it, she wrote, "I don't know what freedom is, but lately I feel like I need it. Maybe one day I'll live like a normal person, speak without asking permission, love someone without hiding." That letter bore no date, no recipient. But those who had been close to Aaliyah knew she wrote it to herself. And perhaps she wrote it one sleepless night in a hotel room, or in a rare moment of solitude where no one was watching. And so, when the plane lifted off, while the world still didn't know she was gone, the little suitcase carrying secrets never sent had flown with her, flown to the final edge of freedom. After Aaliyah's death, countless media outlets published farewells from friends, colleagues, and fans around the world. But one person remained silent for many months, and when he finally spoke, the truth became clear. Damon Dash met Aaliyah for the first time in 2000 at a fashion party in Manhattan. He was then co-founder of Rockefeller Records, one of hip-hop's most powerful names, and she was entering her prime with a more refined and mature image than ever. They met for only a few minutes, but later, Aaliyah sent him a handwritten note that read, "I'm not good at starting conversations, but if you're free, I'd love to meet again." And they did. There were no photos of their walks through Tribeca. No one captured her leaning on his shoulder while watching movies in his apartment. They kept everything private, not out of fear. Damon loved her in a way she had never been loved. He never asked when her next album would drop. He didn't interfere with her team. He didn't push her to appear with him on red carpets. Instead, he called her every morning just to wish her a good day, sent flowers to her video shoots, and quietly sat in the audience as she performed. Aaliyah once said, "When I'm with him, I don't have to act strong. I'm allowed to be silent without explanation." In spring 2001, Damon began planning to propose. He commissioned a custom ring from a jeweler in Soho, engraved with the words, "You are enough," according to a mutual friend. He intended to propose on her birthday the following January. But that moment never came, and the heartbreak was. No one knows if Aaliyah would have said yes, because no matter how deeply she loved, she always kept a distance. She didn't post romantic photos, she didn't walk hand in public, and in every interview. She said she was focused on her career. People thought she was cold, but those close to her knew that was the only way she could protect her love. A diary found in her apartment after her passing read, "I love him, but I don't belong in this world. I'm afraid that if I love like a normal person, someone will seek revenge." Damon Dash never read those words. All he knew was that after she died, the world became too loud. When all he wanted was to sit beside her one more time, he asked her family for permission to create a biopic about her life, not to exploit her story, but to tell it from the view of someone who loved her like a regular human being. But the family refused. They didn't want anyone to represent their daughter, and so Damon fell silent again. In 2005, in a rare interview with MTV, Damon Dash choked up while recalling the last day he saw her. He shared that before Aaliyah left for the Bahamas. They had a small argument, nothing serious. He wanted to go with her. She didn't want him to interrupt his work. She said, "I'm okay. I'll be back quick. I'll tell you everything when I return." And that was the last thing they ever said to each other. Afterward, Damon lived like someone lost. He avoided media, reduced his public activities, and for years didn't enter another serious relationship. In one interview, when asked why he hadn't moved on, he simply said, "Because no one else has eyes like hers, and I can't forget that look." And it was that same gaze, in the Rock, the Boat video, that looked into the camera as if to say goodbye to the man she never got to say goodbye to. It was a direct, gentle look. Gone too soon. It was what Aaliyah never had the chance to reveal that still sends chills through people's hearts. In early 2001, Aaliyah spent most of her time at Atlantic Studios in Manhattan, finishing her third studio album, one that many later believed carried the unmistakable signs of farewell. The album was simply titled Aaliyah. No nickname, no symbol, just her name, as if writing her own musical will, from the cover to the sound. Everything was deeper and stranger than her previous two albums. Songs like We Need a Resolution, I Care for You, What If were no longer the love notes of youth, they were the monologues of a soul surrounded. After her death, many people approached Atlantic asking about unreleased recordings, but her family refused all offers to commercialize those tracks. They said Aaliyah never wanted a song released unless it was complete. But within the music industry, people understood the real reason those recordings stayed hidden was because they weren't just music, they were diaries, confessions, cries that had been voiced but never heard. One track, internally labeled Demo-7, was only 1 minute and 18 seconds long. In it, Aaliyah repeated a single line over a lo-fi beat, "Can I go home now?" The engineer shared that after recording it. She sat in silence for 10 minutes, not leaving the studio. What made it even more haunting was that the album Aaliyah was released on July 17, 2001, just over a month before she passed. No one knew it would be her final message to the world, and no one could explain why every lyric, from official songs to abandoned takes, all carried the same tone: departure, distance, urgency, and foreboding, like a chilling premonition. The album ends with the song I Refuse, where Aaliyah repeats one line 3 times. "I'm tired of pretending, I'm tired of being strong." And now, when people listen again, they no longer think it was a performance. They believe she meant it. Perhaps what she most wanted to say was the one thing no one ever gave her permission to speak, and perhaps, when she sang those last lines, Aaliyah already knew she didn't have much time left. On the morning of August 31, 2001, thousands of fans dressed in black gathered at Ferncliff Cemetery in the Bronx. White flowers covered the steps. The air was filled with the scent of lilies and the soft sound of gospel music from a small speaker near the grave. But strangely, no filming was allowed. Her family asked all media to lower their cameras. They didn't want their daughter's death to be entertainment ever again. What happened afterward became even more unclear. The black box that recorded the final journey of the flight, the most important piece of evidence, was reported to be completely damaged. But in a short local news segment, a resident claimed, "We saw them take the black box away, still intact, but no copies were ever released." When asked about untold stories, Damon Dash only said, "I know there are secrets Aaliyah never dared to speak, and I respect that." Then he looked straight into the camera, without blinking. And maybe what keeps Aaliyah alive in people's hearts isn't that she told everything, but that she held the most painful parts and carried them with her to the grave. Do you believe there are songs that never need to be released to haunt us? Just because the person who made them never got to tell the truth, Aaliyah tried to delay her flight. But someone else signed her name. The black box disappeared. 3 recordings were never released, and a handwritten letter was left unfinished. Do you think that was all coincidence, or was there a force that chose to silence her and cause the fatal crash if this stays with you? Share your thoughts in the comments and follow this channel to uncover the secrets buried forever.